speaking about hey, Bob Chomosono. And Bob Chomosono, legend of the game, Orlando Pirates legend. The reason that Orlando Pirates says they retired the number 10 jersey came out to speak about Utito. He was asked about Utito by journalists in South Africa, South African journalists who were speaking to him at Cosmos's announcement of a new sponsor for the team. So Lucas Batteries is sponsoring Jomo Cosmos. Jomo Cosmos, one of the most storied, long-running teams in South Africa. They just so happen to be down go ABC, trying to get back into the NFD and possibly back into the PSL. He was asked about Utito, and he had a couple of things to say. Some things about the number 10 jersey, where he mentioned that, you know, he didn't ask for that thing to be retired. He does feel like if there's somebody who can stand up and do that and join the elite group of number 10s at Pirates, there should be someone who can do that. But then he spoke about Utito, where he spoke about an element of showboating that happened when Utito was playing, right? There was a point where he said when Tito, but he was facing his own goals and going towards his goals, he switched channels and changed to the English Premiership. He also touched on how he's an elephant in terms of what he is versus the ant that maybe is Utito in this situation, which I'm going to start off by saying, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say a lot of the things that he spoke about were true. He is one of the most important players in Pirates history. He is somebody that a lot of people look up to and say that he's the guy that changed how they view football. There's stories about him leaving his wedding to go play in a Pirates game. There's all of the stories and things that come around whatever's being said there. But my issue, and what I want to start with here, my issue is that I think a lot of our old players, a lot of players in general, lack this thing they call media training. They lack this thing where you understand how heavy your words are, you understand the context in which your words are being asked about. Because think about it, we all know what our media is looking for. They're looking for the quote, they're looking for the headline, they're looking for that thing that's going to make you sound crazy so they can put it in a line and then check it out and then put it out tomorrow. They know that people like us are going to have conversations about it, and we're going to speak about what Ubab Jomo said about Utito and what Pirates fans are going to react with, and how that everything that's been said is going to be lost within the internet and what they say. So for me, it's very important that our older gents go out and learn, guys, that the media is not your friend. Learn that your words last forever. Learn that your words can have consequences on the people you're talking about. Guys, Utito begazenzela izinto zakhe wherever he is. And now he has to contend with the words that were said by Chomoson. He has to contend with the words that were said by a club legend about him. And where I get a little bit frustrated is Ubab Jomo, in what he was saying, spoke about how all of the things he was saying, and you must play and all of that stuff. But the question becomes, Bab Chomo, have you reached out to the boy? As a legend, as somebody who's got Pirates in his hands, as somebody who retired that number 10 jersey, have you reached out to him and said, Yazin boy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let me help you. Let me come to you as somebody who's been in your position, who maybe felt the pressures, who maybe was a showboater, who maybe understands how to showboat and how to do these things, who maybe can come to you and say, don't go backwards when you're dribbling. Has he come to him and had those conversations and spoken to him? Because if he hasn't, then don't go out and speak in public. Don't go out and put the boy under even more pressure. Don't go out and you know, incite a Pirates fan base that was happy up to this point. Get behind them, mentor them, teach them. When you say these words, Prachomo, when you say these words, who knows how Tito's going to take it? Who knows how the people around Tito are going to start acting? I did a video a couple of weeks ago when I was speaking about Umfundo Vilakazi, and it was pretty much a similar situation about showboating, where they were speaking about what he was doing. He's good, he stopped an attack, he did all that stuff. And I said, we cannot, as a fan base, come out and go crazy on this boy who is learning. We cannot, as a fan base, come out and hold this boy to the fire the way we held him to the fire, then expect him to grow tomorrow. And I find this situation with Bab Jomo exactly the same. The other part of it is, if he hasn't spoken to the boy, what role do our legends play? That Bab Jomo, so no legend of Orlando Pirates, can say, I don't really know him. I saw him do 1, 2, and 3. Utito, what's his surname? Those should be the people who are the pillars of strength for these players. They should be the ones who are coming out and backing them and being behind them and scolding them and doing all that as those players, as legendary players. So that really rubbed me the wrong way, speaking so candidly, knowing what happened just weeks ago. His own nephew, Rulani, he came out in defense of Rulani because of what was said in public and the club and all of that stuff. Have the same energy for when they speak about Abo Tito, when they ask you about Abo Tito. And maybe I know, man, Bab Jomo is the bus driver, go Pirates, he's the board of directors, he's all of the things, go Pirates. Maybe you should get somebody who can teach you a little bit of PR so that, man, we don't face these things all the time. But all in all I will say is that even if you're right or wrong, Bab Jomo, understand what you're saying. Understand the depth that your words carry. And, man, just be a mentor to these kids rather than being another problem, if I can put it like that. On to the next topic. Let's go to the next one. Coach Mohan Mamila has exited Baroka. He resigned from Baroka FC, a job that he took up just a couple of months ago during the promotional playoffs to try get into the league. He was one of the teams, along with Richards Bay and Tux, if I'm not mistaken, who were vying for a spot in the PSL. And he took over from Tentens Malisela. Tentens Malisela, a coach who had taken the team through the season, taken them up to the top of the league, well, close to the top of the league, enough for them to be in promotional playoffs, and was taken out. Was taken out with Mohan Mamila brought in freshly after leaving Ichipa United. I think what's interesting about this conversation is that Uchemen came out, and last week he had spoken about how he wasn't going to wait 5 games. He wanted to call, he was called into a meeting, he called Mohan Mamila into a meeting, and he was speaking about how he needed to know. The quote is, he was extremely disappointed, and he wanted reasons as to why his team was where his team was. He wanted reasons because in his own words, Morgan was the only coach of that caliber that could take Baroka forward. When he got rid of, this was said when he got rid of Tentens and Morgan Mamila stepped in. Now, what I want to speak about in this one is from 2 perspectives. One, I want to speak about from the coach's perspective. I think there's a pattern in South African football when it comes to South African coaches. There's a pattern that they're not taken as seriously as maybe they should. Contracts are broken, things are said, owners come out publicly and speak about them, and they're fired very quickly. One of the things that maybe Mohan Mamila can lean on is that he's only been with the club for a couple of months. He took over the club literally in a playoff situation. Couldn't guide them through there, fine. You had just walked in. And now, having just started the seasons, 2 games in, where he lost the game and drew another, conceding 5 goals, you are now being questioned by the same chair people that have put you in. So maybe the question should be that, Coach Mamila, what were you expecting when you walked in? After watching what happened to Abu Tentens, watching how they got rid of, listening to the things that Tentens said, he gave a warning when Tentens left that our chair people need to be wary of the voices behind the scenes, the guys who guide their hand and tell them what to say and what to do and how to act and who to fire and who to move on. This happened when Umogen was hired by his friend, Uchemen Karush Mpahlele. Chairman Patlele when he hired them. So when you walk into this job, Coach Morgan, what type of conversations are had? How many times have we seen coaches walk into the same war zones with the same bombs, and they're happy in the beginning and they get moved out immediately? And how much does your want for a job, your need for a job, your desperation lead you into these places? I can't feel sorry for Coach Mamila knowing that he walked in with his eyes open. I can't feel sorry for him knowing that, guy, there was a coach that was fired right before you, coach. But then I also want to speak about the club side of all of this. Guys, when are we going to start holding our chair people accountable? When are we going to start holding upper management accountable for the moves that they make? And I mean it from the sense of, Baroka's doing well. They're in a promotional playoff. They're in line, or they've got a very good opportunity to maybe do it next year and win that league and go to the PSL. You suspend the coach. All of a sudden, the coach is on some weird suspension, then they're fired. How many times have we seen that pattern in South African football? Coach Siema took Pulukwani to top 5, I believe it was, got moved on. Went ahead and took Skukune and put them into a champions, an African football position where they're playing CAF Confed. Was moved on, had to be brought back. How many times have we seen Coach Tantans himself get fired, get moved on, all of that stuff, only for the club to come back to him years later and come fetch him? At what point do we look at our chair people and say, what is your planning? Just your everyday planning. What is it that you want from the team? How are you giving coaches a chance to do that? And then how are you assessing what you've done? Chairman Patlele can come out loudly and say, this is what I wanted. I wanted this performance was unacceptable. How can I stand for this? I'm not going to wait 5 games. Yeah, Mara, you've just fired somebody who you hired with the same set of conditions. Then you hired him before that, before Tentens, the coach before him was hired and fired with the same conditions. At what point do we look at our chair people and say, what are you doing for the success of this club? How are you making sure that this club is going to be successful if everybody's in a pumangen? How are you making sure that this club is going to be successful? What were you expecting? Hiring a coach during the playoffs. New face, new voice. People are gone. What were you expecting first 2 games of the season, knowing that that coach has maybe had a grand total of 8 games, maybe, or 6 games, most of them being preseason? For you to come out and say it's unacceptable, you won't wait 5 games like the last time. When the last time you were playing in the playoffs because of that man. I think it's very important for us to question our owners, to question the structures that our owners run. Can't be that Mkhulmano chairman, every day, Kinnali chairman, every day when something happens, chairman is the one that comes down. Who's the technical director at Baroque? Who's the team manager? Who's the CEO? Who are the board members? Who are the other people that are in and around that team? That the chairman has to step in from the heavens. And maybe we should ask our executive management, why do you guys want to be so involved with the day-to-day running of these clubs? Why do you guys want to wield an iron fist? Especially when people are doing well. And I can probably tell you where these things break down, because one of his quotes, Chairman Patlele, was saying that Coach Dance doesn't listen. You tell him something and he's fighting. Why are you telling him something? Why did you hire him? Why did you hire him if you're going to be the coach of that team? Or if you're going to be the one giving suggestions? I think it's high time, as South African football as a whole, and even as fans, we start looking to our chair people. We start looking at them and saying, guys, gahle gahle nina nienzani on a day-to-day basis. Who are you hiring? Why are you hiring them? And what is your plan for these clubs? Because you can't keep having this. He was just, guys, these two, I've got a picture up. These two were literally, just last time, he was cheaper technical director. At some point, he was an executive. At some point, he was moved on and made coach. At some point, he left and went to Morocco Swallows. Then he came back. Now he's gone. Then he pitches up. A couple of weeks later, well, a couple of days later, he pitches up at Morocco. Look at Tentens. Back where? Marumo Kellens. What is his history with Marumo Kellens? What is his history with Chipa? So I think as a whole, just to end off this part, our coaches need to look at themselves and seriously, when you take a new job, don't take it out of desperation because you know how it ends. But be serious about what you're doing. And then our chair people and our executives, guys, can you put a little planning into this? What type of football does Morgan play versus, does Coach Morgan play versus Utentens? Coach Dan? Are they compatible? When you move one on, what's going to happen to your style of play? Will the players adapt? These are all questions that we need to start asking all of our teams because all of our teams fall into the same category. Except for maybe a Sundowns, except for maybe a Pirates. But anyway, next topic, speaking of coaching changes, it was announced last week that Fernando de Cruz, a man who arrived first in South Africa to come see Kaizer Chiefs when Coach Nebe was brought in. Coach Nebe's right-hand man, allegedly, a man who was brought in to assess the team before Coach Nebe ever stepped foot into South Africa, has left the team. He's taking up a position at the Moroccan FA where he's going to, I assume, do some technical director jobs over there. And the rumor has it that Coach Atazwane has been tapped to be the person who comes back into the team and be the person that's going to be one of the assistants. As you know, Coach Nebi came with Fernando de Cruz. He came with Khalil Ben Youssef, who's the first assistant coach. He came with Mzugi, who's the goalkeeper coach, and Safia Maji, who's the strength and conditioning coach. I believe Ben Youssef was the first one to leave, if I'm not mistaken, in Kaizer Chiefs. Now, I've got two things that I want to touch on under this specific topic. Number one, what is it at Kaizer Chiefs that's making these guys leave like this? And I don't know if you guys have any red flags that are ringing out. Because one of the big things that we cried about, or what Nebi wanted the first time round, was to have complete control of his technical team. He wanted to hire and fire and bring the people that he wanted, and he didn't want to have Coach Shepard and Coach Zwani put onto his team. So here he comes with these people, somebody who does an assessment, who decides on things for the team, who looks at the players on behalf of Nebi, allegedly, has now left. And we kind of are regressing towards what we had before. And a part that's worrying me about what we had before is, yes, we've made some signings. You've seen Abu Dotli, who played for Bafana. We've seen a couple of signings come in that look very good. But it wasn't the overhaul we thought of, number one. And then number two, Coach Atazwane coming from the shadows to become an assistant coach. Is this what we want at the current moment, right? I don't want to dwell too much on this topic. I don't want to make it seem as though Chiefs is going down a dark path. But maybe we should be a little bit worried that in the space of a couple of months, we've lost two members of Nebi's original team. And, you know, Nebi's coming out to say some things and, you know, he doesn't have a magic wand and he doesn't have all that stuff. So maybe we can also speak about, you know, what is it at Kaizer Chiefs that might be the issue, that these guys are going for better contracts elsewhere or better offers elsewhere. That is something we can discuss. But for this one, I just wanted to highlight that Coach Nebi, another member of his technical team, has left. And it looks like Coach Atazwane is going to be coming back. And Atazwane, who was head coach at some point, and for me, seems to have been hidden by Kaizer Chiefs. They didn't want him to have too many eyes on him. So they kind of put him into the bag. He's kind of development head, he's kind of not, he's kind of in the background. But it seems like Coach Atazwani is going to be making his return and is going to be part of this team. Yeah, Coach Nabi. Then next up, we're going to speak about Williams. For those who don't know, Ronwen Williams has been nominated in the Yashin Award, which is the best goalkeeper at the Ballon d'Or. He's one of 10 of the best goalkeepers in the world, according to these awards ran by a French magazine, L'Equipe, over there in France. He's competing with people like Emiliano Martinez from Argentina and Aston Villa. He's competing with guys like Diogo Costa from Portugal. And he's not a slouch. I mean, he was a big part as to why we came third at the AFCON. We all know about those penalty saves. He has the semi-finals of CAF. He was part of that Invincibles team. He was COSAFA Player of the Year. He was PSL Player of the Year on top of that. And also best goalkeeper at the AFL and AFL, which they also won. Firstly, well done to Ronwen. Well done to Ronwen. To get nominated at these awards coming from the African continent is so hard, and it's an insane thing to have got it. He's the first goalkeeper nominated in this award, being a goalkeeper that is based in Africa. And he's one of few Africa-based players that have ever made it to Ballon d'Or nominations across all categories. Of course, the most famous one was Oscarin Masuluke for Kanangwana versus Pirates, and that was for the Goal of the Year award. So what's nice about this is that I think we finally have the pathway as an African player. If you want to take part in these things or be seen, I think the AFL did quite a lot of heavy lifting in this regard to make sure that Ronwen is visible enough to be seen by those guys. They did well at AFCON, an AFCON that was widely better marketed, widely better hosted, which brought a lot of eyes from the world onto this, which is amazing, especially owing to the fact that he's going up against people that, outside of Emiliano Martinez, Emi Martinez, who is a Copa America winner, I don't think there's another keeper there that maybe has the same accolades. And what's nice is getting a little bit of recognition, getting a little bit of a sense of where we rank in the world. If now Ronwen can go out and do these things, maybe for other players going forward, it can provide an opportunity for them to come out and demand more. You know, but Debza, who are playing in the CAF week in, week out, who are playing for Bafana, maybe when they start being visible in Europe, they can go there. And maybe this creates a viable pipeline towards going to Europe through our South African teams. And maybe the Club World Cup is going to be something really important next year when they go to America to go play in it, Mamelodi Sundowns, along with Wydad, along with other teams. We could see some of these guys getting taken seriously in terms of that. So I think that is incredible, because maybe we're starting to see the weight of African football. Maybe we're going to start taking it seriously, you know, as Africans, to say that, no, guys, I see your Russian leagues and all of that. We've got an AFCON, we've got a CAF Champions League, we've got an AFL, we've got the types of competitions that can put players onto these awards. So big ups to Ronwen Williams, and hopefully he goes out and wins it. I'll do some research, a little bit of research, to see how the voting happens, so that we can also maybe contribute if it is open to the public. But let's move on to the last one, also linked to Ronwen in a way. Hey man, Aigunzime Morocco, guys. Aigunzime Morocco. Coach Rulani has been in Morocco. For those who don't know, he is coaching Wydad Athletic Club, one of the biggest teams in Africa, one of the most storied teams in Africa, 5 times Champions League winners, African Champions League winners here in the continent. They had come about some tough times. So the team finished 5th, if I'm not mistaken, last year. They had fired the coach, funny enough, who got beaten by Rulani in the final of the AFL. They had brought in some caretakers, and they decided that as soon as Rulani was free, he would be brought over and he'd get a chance to coach the team. He has been shown a lot of love. Hey, Bamtandu Rulani in Morocco. The fans screaming his name, chasing him down the streets, doing videos. Before this game that they played that I'm going to speak about, he was given a new, traditional dress thing that he had to wear as an honor from the youth team before going out and playing and coaching this game. And the game ended with a draw. So that means Coach Rulani, his record starting at Wydad, is now a win, a draw, and a loss. His first league game was a loss, and then he was able to win in the first round of this cup, the Excellence Cup. And now he's drawn with Ravab Athletic Club, a team that is in the NFD of Morocco. He has drawn with them, and it's looking a little bit tough there. What I want to speak about here is how much rope do you get in Morocco? How much rope will Rulani get? Because he's been afforded a lot of things. Rulani has been given the signings he wanted. He's brought in guys like Abu Keses Mailula. He's rumored to be bringing in Bongani Zungu. He's brought in a whole bunch of other signings that he's asked for. He's got a technical team that is mostly South African. He's brought in a whole bunch of people, even bodyguards. The Sundowns, not bodyguards, security guards, the Sundowns have allegedly made their way over to Wydad Casablanca, right? And in as much as it's great to get support, especially in a foreign country, when does the support run out? When do they look at you and say, okay, we had a preseason, we've signed all these players, you've got 3 games, we did badly, we brought you in because you are almost an invincible coach, you won the AFL knocking us out, we've been crying about you. At what point in Morocco do they look at him and say, maybe you're not the guy for us? And how much pressure is Coach Rulani under right now? Because like I said, you're expecting a superstar coach. You're expecting a Pep Guardiola. You're expecting that type of impact. When you go and fetch this guy, you are lucky even, you may feel a bit lucky, he was even available to come out and be signed by you. But we all know Morocco and we all know the North. The North doesn't wait for long. The North is not a place where they're going to give you a lot of time. And at what point does it run out for Rulani? And what type of run does he have to go on? He's still being humble, to his credit. He's coming out and apologizing for these things. He's coming out and saying that he feels the pain that the club feels and they've been through a tough time. But hey, when you become not the coach that we wanted, but the South African, what happens then? So that was just an interesting part that I saw. And maybe a couple of questions that we need to ask about Coach Rulani's stay over there in Morocco and what type of things he's going to get, man. What type of time and love is he going to get on that side? But anyway, let's move on to the match that Bafana played with Uganda in the qualifiers for the AFCON. We're moving on to the good and the bad, a place where I just tell you 5 of the bad things and 5 of the good things I saw from the game. So here we go. 5. You have a game that is played in Orlando Stadium. It's a game where, it's a stadium where we've seen sold out crowds over the past games that Orlando Pirates has played in the MTN 8 and has played CAF. We've seen the vibe, we've seen everything to do with what makes Orlando Stadium great. So when they announced that they were going to host this game called Orlando, personally I got very excited because it was a chance for them to do what they did, go to Toyota Stadium, go Bloom. It was a chance for them to, sell out a stadium that already has momentum, and maybe that helps them out. But one more time, we have another game where people don't know that the game is playing, where people don't know who we are playing, what the stakes are. I was live during the game and a lot of people were jumping in and saying, "Ow, when is Bafana playing? Is this game live? What is happening?" And I think it's about time that both SABC, that both SAFA start stepping up their efforts in making sure that we know about these games, that we know about this team. This team has done so well over the past few years under Hugo Bruce, but we don't see a promotion. We don't see them doing things like tours in Orlando, taking the team around. You've got to Rilem Fukeng, you've got to Mbata, you've got to Tito on the team. You don't do things that can excite the crowd. For the past 2 weeks, we've watched the Springboks. The past 2 weeks, We've seen in Joburg at Ellis Park or Emirates Airlines Park, we've seen in Cape Town what good marketing and a good field does. And I want to put aside when we speak about the winning of the Springboks and all of that, you still have to build a support base for this team. Guys, these are AFCON qualifiers. This is the same AFCON where we came third just earlier this year. We came third, we played incredibly. We are now trying to qualify to go back to that thing that's going to be happening in January, allegedly. But we can't build an excitement around the team. You have to struggle to get information. You have to struggle to watch. Guys, if you watched the MTN8 games, if you watched any of that stuff, you'll realize that SuperSport was advertising the Springbok game. You've seen the Springboks. This past 2 weeks, you've seen the Springboks in football get advertised more than the national team in football. How then are people supposed to love this team and attend these games? How are we supposed to give them that impetus? Last time they were speaking about how fans were not on their side. How we need more people at the stadium, how there's negativity and all of that. Nobody knows. So I implore Safa to do a little bit better on that regard, or a lot better on that regard. We want to see the Gautrain. Guys, rugby fans were using train, metro rail to get to Emirates Airlines Park. Yet we can't do that for our football. For the people that use the Kaido day to day. So something needs to be done. Okay, so that was my number 5.
Number 4.
At number 4, that midfield. Bafana is a great team. Bafana plays. But I think one of the things that you start to see when we have tough matches is that we struggle to build up the ball. We play a helicopter light type football where we are very wide, and Mudau, more specifically, handles a lot of the responsibility of moving the team up the pitch. And what you start to see when he is slowed down, or when he can't make it up there, or maybe Valile, or maybe he has bad decision making, is that our centre mids can't do the job of linking the front and the back. I've said a lot about our national team that we struggle to get the ball from, even when Ronwin is on the pitch, from him to Uzwane. And it's because our two midfielders are utility midfielders who are there to play the ball, who are there to marshal the midfield, cover for Mudawo, Mudiba, and play back passes. They play a lot of wall passes back to the defense. And that is something that maybe we need to start changing. We're going to speak later on in the big things, the big conversation about the B team of Bafana, quote unquote. But for this, I maybe need some other players who can come in, Baltung, who can come in and trap the ball and turn and play it forward, who can come in and link Uzwane. And maybe in some games, when we find it a bit tough to do what we normally do, we need to look at Yaya and Debza and say, okay, we need to sacrifice one so that we can bring in an Adams, let's say, or we can bring in somebody, or Van Veek, or somebody who can come in and play the ball. Ombata, actually. Because at times we're going to need that. The Uganda coach did come out and say that our primary focus was Utemba Zwane. And the sad thing about Temba Zwane in the Bafana setup is that he doesn't necessarily get that ball. He doesn't get that ball. They either have to play it over to Makhopa, who wins the first ball, and that's how we get into our attacking phases, or it has to go wide. And Zwane is not really a help when it's wide. So maybe Hugo Bruce needs to start looking at those type of things to say, let's also have ball players, especially if we don't have ball playing backs. If you're not going to bring a Kutsia, if you're not going to bring people who are comfortable on the ball, right? We've held our breath when we saw Ubanungezana and Dortley trying to play the ball at times. Then maybe you need somebody who can help supplement that thing, or invert Mudiba. But something needs to be done about our build-up. Let's go to The next
Number
one.
3.
I always say when you're playing games against teams that maybe you didn't think you'd get a win against, and you are leading, it comes down to you being dangerous. I think Bafana at times struggled in that game, not only because of the defensive discipline of Uganda or them committing so many players and marking out certain players and targeting people, but they found a little bit of pressure because when Uganda went forward, they had, something. You could tell that, okay, the plan is to shoot. We'll get into why. The plan is to get forward as quickly as possible. They were turning our midfielders. They were getting into spaces. They were trying their best to seem dangerous, which I believe is the most important thing. When you play a better team, and you have them against the ropes, the last thing you want to do is to give them confidence and momentum. And I believe this is what Uganda got wrong when they played versus Bafana. Towards the end of that game, this is what they got wrong. That they stopped going forward. They stopped giving Mudiba sleepless nights. They stopped dispossessing our midfielders high. They stopped all of that stuff and started playing like a team that is ranked in the hundreds. And I think that was very sad because they had the game in their hands as far as I'm concerned with this game. They had this game in their hands for much of that game. But similar to when you go and play Sundowns, similar to when you go and play a bigger team, if you allow them the ball and let them tap the ball and let them play the ball and gain confidence, right? You're going to leak and something's going to happen. Whether it be as great as what Mudiba did with the ball over the top, whether it be somebody's knee getting hit, the ball hitting a knee and going in, you will find those issues as you go along. So I'm sad that Uganda chose to give that game away towards the end.
Number 2.
I think there's people that struggled in that game. And one of the people that struggled throughout that game was Mokwena. I don't think Mokwena's role was properly fleshed out or explained to him to the point where he could play that game. I think Umudau taking the bulk of the attacking game and pushing up into that right wing space forced Mokwena to not know whether to be a second striker with Lau Foster, whether to drop back and play behind Umudau to win balls there or to watch that space if there's a counter. He wasn't quite sure what to do. And we all love Mokwena, but we all know how Mokwena plays. He's a player who needs space on the side. He gets the ball, he looks at a defender and takes them on directly. So barring that, what could he bring to the game? If you look on the other side with Apolis had decided that he was no longer going to play that wing role. He was going to come in and play as an 8. He was going to come in and drop back and fetch the ball deep and play through that centerish channel, because he also knows that when you have Mudiba behind you, that wing play is not going to happen. So I think his role was more defined than what Mokwena was. My only issue with those two, besides the fact that they don't know where to move with each other, my concern is that Mokwena is better in the attacking third than what Mudau is, especially if he's going to play a traditional wing. And what I mean by traditional wing is to find the byline and maybe cross balls in. If you're going to be doing that, right, I'd much rather have Mokwena carry the load, because at least he can beat a man and maybe he can play the ball in, right? So Hugo Bruce needs to work on that partnership if they are going to be the partnership, because we know normally the player that plays there is Persitao. And I guess to the benefit of the doubt, Persitao is usually not necessarily in that space all the time. So Mudau has that time, right? He has that time, he has that space, he can do what he needs to do, he doesn't get in the way of everybody. Persitao doesn't mind going central, he doesn't mind dropping back in. So that's just something that Hugo Bruce has to do, and it's something that I want to touch on when we speak about the big conversation at the end of the show.
Number 1.
Oh, Shem. If there's somebody who had a bad game, if there's somebody who wants to forget what happened on Friday, it has to be Velimoto. Veli Motwa isn't normally the goalkeeper. I'm going to start off with some positives or benefit of the doubt. Veli Motwa isn't normally the goalkeeper for Bafana. And going up against somebody who's nominated at the Ballon d'Ors, the Yashin Award, as Ronald Williams is, it'll be it's a tough act to follow. It's a tough thing to come in for that man. It's a tough thing to come in and be expected to play the way that Williams plays and play out from the back and put the ball into spaces and do this and do that and do that. It's a tough thing to follow. Penalty saves, all of that. And we've seen Ricardo Goss have his flukes versus Andorra where he made a mistake and Andorra was able to score and it put us under pressure, right? So I'm not expecting him to be the best. I'm also not expecting too much from a goalkeeper who hasn't played a game this season or competitive game this season. There's players on that pitch, your Sundowns players, your Pirates players, your chain on the bench who have had run time, who have come out and played important games, played at match speed, done those things. Motwa hasn't had the chance to do that. So I think to give benefit of the doubt and to be fair to him, that is some of the things that he was dealing with coming into this game. Wasn't expecting him to be perfect. But what I was expecting was a keeper that wouldn't make schoolboy mistakes. It was a keeper that once they've shown you their hand, you adapt. And this is what I mean from it. The goal at the 52nd minute or the 50th minute that Uganda scored might not have been Veli Motwa's problem or fault. The goal that was shot from the halfway line, was not the first long shot he faced. In fact, Uganda, for most of the first half, we were saying when we were watching it, was that the moment they crossed the halfway line, it's like they were told to just shoot. So now they've shown you their hand. You've now conceded a goal where somebody has shown you that they shoot very well. You couldn't do much about it, I think. They dispossessed your midfielders right in front of you. Your defense was a little bit too far away to be able to help, and they had their own people they were watching. The shot was perfect, went into the corner. You don't see that at the PSL many times. But after you've seen all of that, I expected to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to where I am on my line. I expected to be a little bit more wary that these long shots are coming. Because the flapping he did when that shot for the second goal came in was not very good goalkeeping. You know, a lot of these players were put into the national side because of experience. They were put into the national side because they're some of the best. Yes, some of them seem to be more cheerleaders than they are first team players or full on whatever, but you can't doubt that these guys have been national team players, professional players for a very long time. So to make a mistake like he made there, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. But yeah, it happens. People have bad games. Let's see if he can redeem himself if given a chance in our next game versus South Sudan tomorrow, or if this might be it for him. But it wasn't all bad.
Number 5.
The first good I'm going to focus on. Lau Foster scored. Lau Foster, in terms of the national team, has had a very interesting time. He has dealt with his depressive episodes, his depression. He has dealt with a lot of things that has happened that has kept him out of football, kept him out of the national team. He could have been one of the players that was important at the AFCON for us. Maybe we do a little bit better. Who knows? So watching him come back and get a goal, watching him come back and at times show us that little bit of pedigree that he has, like a difference between him and, let's say, a PSL striker, was good. It's good for him to get on the score sheet because I feel as though we're going to lean on Lyle a lot. Going to lean on him a lot for the coming future. And he's probably the guy who's going to lead the line for the next couple of years, if not 3, 4, 5 years even. So to have him integrate and come back was good, but also to watch his relationship with Uzwane, to watch how well they play together and play off of each other. I think there's potential there. I think there's potential because, again, I don't wanna sound like I'm disrespecting anyone, but I think Uzwane is leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of players in terms of the thinking, in terms of sometimes the way that he plays in that 10 position. He has a want, man. He really needs to play the ball to people. He's not a very good finisher, but he can find you in the box. He can do things in the box that a lot of other players can't do. And I think Lyle and him can develop a very important relationship for Bafana. And Lyle Sasso, he's going to eat. Utloja Kazwan. Utloja strong Kazwane. So it was very good to see him make his comeback to the team.
Number 4.
They gave us a game. Uganda didn't sit back. Uganda showed us that, even if we are lesser opposition, we can give you a run for your money. I think Uganda served as a reminder, as a wake-up call, that this is international football. That what we did to Morocco, who were second in the world by rankings at the time, can be done to you by a country that is more than 100, more than 130, I believe it was, more than 100 spaces from you. And I think they showed up, and they exposed a lot of things. We're asking questions today because of Uganda and how they played. And actually, they outplayed our players quite a bit. I'd say the midfield, Tebza was outplayed for the first time in a very long time, quite a bit there in that midfield, as well as Uyaya. They showed us a little bit of a weakness with Abo Velimoto. They showed us a weakness. I mean, 20 minutes into the game already, Mudau had a yellow card, Kemang Gezana had a yellow card, and had Uganda carried on pushing, maybe they could have gotten something from this game, and maybe we're talking a completely different issue. But them giving us a game means that maybe we'll wake up.
Number 3.
Okay, I'm going to speak about this at length in the last segment, but I think it's good that we are seeing other players coming in. I think we've had a Bafana team where there's been players that have traveled with the team for a very long time and haven't gotten a chance to come in. And it's not to say that it's for them to be seen as bad players or for them to make mistakes so we can see the difference between the first team, quote unquote, and the second team. But it's good to give those players that have been with you for a while game time. I was happy to see Velimoto playing. I was very happy. I was happy to see Abo Telendebata get a chance. I was happy to see Abo Mfukeng get a chance. I think we need to blood in more players, because if anything that was shown to us for this Uganda game is that the Sundowns cohort, more specifically, may not be up to a game for whatever reason. It's not necessarily what's happening at Mamelodi Sundowns, but they may not be up to it that day. You need capable people who can come in and play. You need capable people who are ready, right? Who have been in the system, who understand it, who can jump in at the moment's notice, and you don't drop in quality. And in order to do that, you need to give them chances. You need to give them opportunities. You need to make sure that all of the theory they're learning from Hugo Bruce, that Bruce is like this and I'm comfortable around him and the team and you're in the pipeline, it needs to end up somewhere, or else we're doing that for Mahal. So I think it was a very good thing that we saw these teams, or this team, or other players, or Velimoto more specifically, coming out and playing, not to break their feelings or break their hearts or kick them out of the squad, but for them to actually get game time.
Number 2.
Hi, man. Oh, talent. I don't know what it is, man, that you guys have that Pirates. I don't know what it is about Orlando Stadium, but it's almost like Orlando Stadium, ivume when those guys got onto the pitch. When Talente Mbata and Fukeng walked onto the pitch, the game changed. And I think this is great because Talente, since we watched him go preseason, there was a preseason game where we were even commenting about how he's trying to show that I'm a big deal. He's trying to show that I'm ready. He was trying to show that I'm staying in Europe. He's shown a lot of performances where that midfield man started ticking when he gets onto the pitch, that he can be somebody for the future, especially in that 6 or 8 type role. So I really love that. I really love, on top of that, the fact that the Pirates youngsters, man, they're getting time. No, Mfukeng, man, there's a move that Mfukeng did to people's fathers. There's a thing that he did, man, about Valaboy too. And they needed a bit of that. And to go back to my previous point about the B squad players playing, it was so nice to see a different kind of game in the second half. It was nice to see that Bafana can play a different game, can come out and hold the ball, can be a little bit tricky, can commit some people forward. It doesn't necessarily all have to go wide and be crosses, doesn't necessarily have to be, route one, and you can build through the midfield. So I was very happy to see Mbata not only get his chance, but take it with both hands. I was very happy to see Mfukeng also not only get his chance, but take it with his hands. But also, I was so happy to see it happening at Orlando Stadium because for me, it felt a little bit like a payoff. It felt a little bit like, man, everything Paris has been going through to the past few weeks, where they've been going and playing at Orlando was full and all of that. I don't know about you, I'm not a Pirates fan, but I'd imagine that a lot of Pirates fans, man, feel happy. And you know what? If Paris does get into the Champions League, what is going to happen to these boys getting that football, playing in Africa, and what they're going to be able to bring back to the team, similar to what Sundowns brings back to Bafana, I think it's going to be great. Shotanjeo Tito, I don't know why Tito didn't get a chance to play. I don't know why he wasn't there, but wow, it was incredible to watch. It was incredible to watch.
Number 1.
And then, of course, the biggest good that you can find here, a point is a point. If you can turn a loss into a draw, and you can turn draws to wins, that is where greatness